How do you deal with an overly friendly neighbor who asks too many questions about your life when you happen to be outdoors at the same time? If you're not very open to chat, just keep things polite yet quick. It's nice to have a good relationship with your neighbors. If they do delve into personal questions, just say that's a bit personal, I'd rather not talk about that. Most important thing is to be polite. Don't be an asshole, or act standoffish when it's not necessary. Honestly, just use some common sense. Don't be a Redditor, is all I'm saying. Hey man. Nice lawn. What do you use on that? It's personal. Spoiler, it's the blood of his enemies, and the lamentation of their women. That's how his lawn is so luxurious. I think his neighbor might be Conan Don't Call Me O'Brien the Sumerian. See, we just said don't be a Redditor. But nobody ever listens to advice, so here we are. I've always just casually said, hey, that's kind of personal. When said with a smile, it usually works. Edit notes. 1. Thanks for the awards too. Some people have pointed out that the kind of isn't necessary, and in a sense, they're right. It's just how my speech usually sounds, and I find that the kind of is easier to say as a non-confrontational person. Turns out the friendly yet honest approach works very well for many situations. Now you're supposed to overreact massively and then post on Ramathias hole. Ida for getting mad at my neighbor because they were being overly friendly. Ida, I never set boundaries with my neighbor, so now they think they can ask my questions. Red flags everywhere. You didn't technically break the law by screaming at him for 45 minutes. Nah. He's the asshole, he belongs in big jail. I will personally make sure his inbox is filled with hateful messages. Nta. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. To take him to court. This is also ducking spot on, but this one takes the cake. Wow. The responses. Some good soon are clearly trying to be funny, but some are disturbing. Look, it is important to be on good, if not, friendly terms with your neighbors. You will have them in your life for a long time whether you like it or not. The responses that recommend short, vague answers where you follow up with questions of your own are the best. You may very well discover a new friend, or you may both realize you don't click and you will naturally not take it any further. But you will be left with a neighbor that is at least on good terms. Remember, they may be the person to notice you being robbed when you are not home, or notice the smoke from a fire first, or be accepting of the noise from a large party you decide to throw. There could be a lot of reasons they are talkative, and not all of them are them just being nosy or a dick. They could be genuinely interested, lonely, had a bad neighbor in that house previously, etc., to name a few. Seriously. The answers that recommend angry confrontations or talk of bodily functions are just ridiculous, and probably from 14-year-olds who have never actually had to navigate relationships with people in the wild. Having your neighbor on good terms is really wonderful, if not crucial. They will be at hand to borrow an egg or help you in an emergency. Hell, my neighbor called me to come sit with her as her husband died. All her family was far away and she needed someone who could come over in 30 seconds to hold her hand and be with her as he took his final breaths. That's what neighbors do, there's no sense in alienating people. It's very important. These people, as you said, could have never been homeowners. I would give anything for an overly friendly neighbor at this point. I have spent 20 years trying to find one that at the very least ducking waves. I wave at my neighbors. Mostly they just stare back at me. The neighborhood has changed in the last few years. I miss all the people that would wave back. Same here. I always wave and smile, but only a few will wave back. Our neighbor directly next door even called the police on us for parking on the street. It wasn't illegal and the police told her so. I wrote her a nice letter about how we'll probably be living next to each other for a long time and I want to get along, hoping to patch things up, and I included a gift card to a local restaurant as an olive branch. She wrote me back apologizing and telling me to park there whenever. Then the next time we did, she called the police again. That was almost 6 years ago, but I still think of her as the crazy bitch with the yappy dogs. At this point I just like a neighbor who doesn't call the police on me for parking in front of my own house. Wow. What you did was really awesome, and if she had any hint of normalcy, would've worked. She's totally crazy. Look, honestly, I have very poor social awareness and no filter at all, so they would probably hear about how my chronic illnesses have resulted in constipation so bad that I have to be on laxatives for 6 months to restart my bowels, and the consequences that all of this is on my sex life. I fully accept that I am the reason that I have very few friends. You ever been in a storm, Wally? Not a thunderstorm, but a storm of fists, raining down on your head, pummeling you in the chest until you think your heart is gonna stop. You ever been in a storm like that, Wally? The execution of that line is just masterful. Dennis might be my favorite for his powerful delivery of intense dialogue like this, lol. The teeth jaw clench he does during the implication bit is borderline genius. I live in an extremely religious community, Mormon, so this happens all the time. I used to try to be vague and give hints, but the best technique I have found is this one. I am kind of a private person. And then I compliment them on something I have noticed. Nice grass, or hey, thanks for checking on me, I know it comes from a good place. Oh, Mormons, you gotta love em. I live in Utah, so I can relate. Difference is that once they found out we weren't Mormon, we pretty much turned invisible. Edit, just felt like I should add a bit more since this comment is gaining traction. Utah is kind of a strange place, and Utah Mormons are not like other Mormons. Everything in the whole state was built and run by Mormons. The whole state has this sense of community. Everything is connected. Outsiders are not unwelcome, they are just outsiders. It's hard to put it to words, but it's not hostile. It's just that once they figured out you are not part of this massive interconnected group, then they move on. Someone else mentioned people coming around to ask about wards, and it is spot on. I also want to add that my parents' neighbors are very friendly and have always gotten along with them. Sell your house and try again. Try having a neighbor who tracks when you leave and arrive back home. Talks to your boss about your work schedule and when you're actually supposed to be at home. Asking my boss if I had COVID when she noticed I hadn't left the house in a couple days. The list goes on and on. I ducking hate nosy neighbors. Is your life really that miserable you have to worry about strangers? I told her off and we are currently looking to move. Some people are just bad neighbors. WTF? Sounds like borderline stalking to me. Yep, sure feels that way. Sometimes she will come outside just to check our driveway and see if my car's there and then just stare at our lawn property. I cannot wait to move. That absolutely is stalking, not borderline. That's creepy AF, and that bitch needs to duck off and find something better to do with her miserable life. Some of the responses you've gotten don't seem to understand that there are just people like this, that don't respect personal boundaries and can't pick up on subtle hints like one-word answers. The way I deal with these people is by humoring them for a bit, using some of the tactics already mentioned, giving short, uninterested answers. If they don't catch the hints I'm dropping, I'll pretend to have something else to do. Go inside. The premise of this question is why the phrase good fences make good neighbors exists. Try to make your boundaries clear and, barring that, build a tall fence so they can't bother you. I made friends with my neighbor at the beginning of lockdown. Now whenever I go out front of my house, he comes out. Every single time. Even when we just open our front door, he comes out and just sits. One time, Amazon dropped a package off when I was working on the side of the house. He opened his window, proceeded to yell to me that Amazon had delivered a package. I don't go out of the front door anymore unless going to my car. I just hang out around back and even take my dogs on walks leaving through and arriving through the backyard. My old coworker had a very similar story. They made friends with the neighbor and then he would come around every day to the point it was inappropriate. Oftentimes he would sit on their front porch and would bother them at all hours, and eventually started asking for money, saying creepy stuff like, "You must have some extra money. I know you work long hours, you haven't been coming home till after 11 p.m. most nights." There's a huge difference between talkative neighbors and guys like that. Yo, duck that. Ask them about their life, the same way they do. Edit, okay, look, what I meant to say is bother them as much as they do to you, so then they'll see that and then stop, or they either spend so much time talking about themselves that you don't even have to share anything personal. My experience with people like that is, don't engage them at their own tactics. They probably have no problem telling you about their life story, hemorrhoids, asking you to feed their cats, long awkward meandering stories that they follow you around to tell you, etc. Be firm, polite and keep your distance.